OmegaMetroid.com is here. We're so proud to finally share our website with you, giving Metroid fans a dedicated Metroid one-stop shop for the latest news, fan creations, walkthroughs, maps, and of course, the latest episodes of the Omega Metroid podcast. That's not all. If you'd rather listen on YouTube, you can check out episodes there. And if you really want to take your Omega Metroid experience to the next level, consider supporting us on Patreon. You'll get access to special Discord roles, a platform on the website to promote your projects, exclusive bonus shows, and so much more. Memberships start at just as little as $1 a month. OmegaMetroid.com is the source of all this great content. So whether you're a new Metroid fan or a series veteran, OmegaMetroid.com is the place for you. Check out OmegaMetroid.com today.
And welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Doominal Crossing. Doom, how are you, sir? I don't know, I feel like it's been a minute since we linked up on the podcast, or am I just imagining things?
No, it's been a while since you and I linked up. I did sub in for you, actually, I want to say like a week or two ago now. So yeah. I did get a chance to speak with Dak. We talked about, Metroid Dread's, at the time, new boss rush mode. It is about a month later now since we did that. But, I still haven't had a chance to play said boss rush mode because I've been very, very busy with school. But we're on the final stretch. We got 2 weeks left remaining, and then definitely going to be diving into that boss rush mode. Definitely going to be streaming some Dread mode like I've wanted to for a while now. And I'm looking forward to finally finishing Ori and the Blind Forest, which is, from what I've played so far, has been an incredible experience, and I'm looking forward to actually having the time to see that through, and maybe even play the sequel right after.
Yeah, and maybe we'll even be hearing some thoughts about Ori and the Blind Forest in the not-so-distant future, but that's for another day. Before we get started on this week's show, had lots of really good feedback on last week's show with Kiwi and Catherine. So if you missed out on that Would You Rather episode, I highly encourage you guys go back and listen to it. I think that was one of my favorite episodes of the podcast that we've ever done. It was a lot of fun. And you had some really good anecdotes on that, Doom, especially when it came to the Metroid Prime 2 soundtrack. You made a lot of really good arguments and had a lot of really apt analysis.
I'm glad you enjoyed that for sure. Yeah, Echoes. I know it's not the popular opinion, which I mean, Prime 1. There's no disrespect to Prime 1. Both of these soundtracks are like 10 out of 10 masterpieces. I love both of these scores to death. But for me, Prime 2 just takes it that extra mile. And again, I've talked about this before on a previous episode. Back when you were still planning out your wedding, me and Dak did our music episode where I talked a little bit about the Prime 2 soundtrack as well, and like some of the unique aspects of that. But yeah, so if you enjoyed that analysis, definitely check out episode 78, I believe it is, and you can hear me and Dak gush about amazing Metroid music.
There you go. And if you want to hear Doom's music analysis in real time, check out the Omega Metroid Discord. All right, enough shilling. Let's get to today's topic. Actually, I lied. We're going to shill just a little bit more before we get to today's topic. We have a new segment, though, debuting on the show here, and it's called Samus's Percentages, and I'm very excited about that. But before we get there, we should mention a project that has kind of gained some notoriety this last week, and that is the Metroid 64 project. And I was a little bit hesitant on reporting this project on Omega Metroid because we know what happens when a project like that tends to, go viral, if as you were. But it's been posted by a bunch of other different sites, so the cat's out of the bag now. There is a developer named Luto Aquino who is working on a very early stage prototype of what Metroid 64 could have looked like, and this really does look like a game that would have debuted on the Nintendo 64. It's very kind of nostalgic, actually, even though it was a game that never existed. Just the textures and stuff on the wall. It looks great, and it looks like what I think a lot of us thought that Metroid Prime might look like, and it's kind of a 3D third-person action-adventure game. Very cool project, and we might have more coming up on that project in the future here, but if you haven't seen the video yet, definitely go and take a look. There's an article on OmegaMetroid.com that highlights all of the physics and the happenings and stuff of this video. Very cool, and again, so many talented people out there, man. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, this thing just looks super cool, even though it's only I want to say a couple of rooms. You have the starting area as well as a big vertical shaft, which it actually, despite being 3D, there was a lot of kind of classic 2D tropes in that, especially again with that vertical shaft. Yeah. And it's just really creative. It kind of, to me, it looked like an N64 game without that late 90s jank and kind of that early introductory to 3D, because this was a lot of first people's attempts at making 3D games, so everyone was just kind of throwing darts at the dartboard and kind of experimenting. This looks like a modernized take of what a classic N64 game could be, which I thought just looked awesome.
Yeah, two things that stuck out to me with this is, one, how seamless the Morph Ball transition looked. It looked very, very seamless. And two, is that when Samus is firing, it's not just straight ahead firing. You can actually move the arm cannon and kind of have I don't even know what you'd call it, but the 360 aiming. It kind of looks like you got that kind of same thing, but in actual 3D. So it looks very cool. Check it out if you haven't already.
Kind of like Metroid Prime's manual aiming on the GameCube.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. All right, let's get to Samus's percentages, and this is something that I think we're gonna have a really fun time with. And I ripped this off from Sports Radio and just changed the name. So if anyone recognizes this and you live in the Calgary area, you know exactly where I got it from. But the premise is simple. I am going to present a series of statements to Doominal and to myself, actually, because I'm going to weigh in on this too. And we are going to assign a percentage that we think is likely that these series of statements will, in fact, take place. So, once again, I'm going to say a statement, and we're going to give a percentage on how likely we think that statement is to come true. So, very simple premise, very easy to follow, very, very fun to get behind. So, that being said, Doom, are you ready to get going?
I'm ready to gamble. Let's go.
Okay. Samus's percentages, number 1. Metroid Prime 4 will sell over 10 million copies.
Ooh. Oh, man. I see. I know what Dak's answer would be if he was here. He'd be going full 100. I'm not sure if I'm that confident.
I'm going to give this 15%.
15.
I do not see it happening. Especially, the only way I could maybe see it happening is if Metroid Prime 4 launches with the new Nintendo system, whatever that happens to be, the Super Switch, the Switch 2, the Switch Pro, whatever, as a launch title and gets a massive sustained push behind it. Because, Metroid Dread got a huge push, and that game is doing about it's probably at about 4 million right now.
I'm not sure about 4 million. It's definitely hit 3 million at this point, I think, but I'm not quite sure about 4 million.
I think it's hit 4 probably at the high point, right?
Maybe by October, a year from when it's released. I think maybe then it could hit 4 million, but I wouldn't bet on that right now.
Well, my point is that 4 million is the absolute most that game is sold. And it's been out for a year, and it received the most dominant marketing push that a Metroid game probably ever has. And
since the first Prime, at least.
Since the first Prime, yep. I don't know. I just don't see it. I know that Dak has been floating that number around, but I don't see it. I think that we're gonna see some of these Switch games start to cool off a little bit in terms of sales. So I'm gonna say 15%. What about you, Doom?
See, the problem is it's too early to make this prediction yet because we haven't even seen the game in action yet. Before we do that, there's a couple things that I want to see first. First of all, I want to see the sales of that inevitable Metroid Prime Trilogy HD or Prime Remaster, whatever it turns out to be. I want to see what those sales turn out to be first. And obviously, they're probably not going to be as big as Prime 4 since it's a re-release, but I feel like it could be a good indicator possibly of what Prime 4 could be since it has a closer relationship to that than, a 2D game like Dread. So I want to see those sales numbers first. And second of all, I want to hear what the discussion about this game is like once we do start seeing gameplay. What is the general conversation going around? How farther out is it stretching out than just the Metroid and general Nintendo communities? And I think then we'll be able to make a more accurate assessment. Probably not a super accurate assessment, but more than we have right now. But just because of what little information we have going on right now, I'm going to go maybe a little higher than you. I'd say 20%, but still well below 50, I think.
It's a shot in the dark, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's fair. And I actually think that, we could use a few games, re-releases or remasters, contemporaries, to kind of gauge where a Metroid Prime HD remake might sell as well. So, for example, if Skyward Sword HD, let's say, sells 5 million copies, I think that maybe it could be a safe assumption or hypothesis that Metroid Prime HD might sell half that. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but I think that would be a success.
I think Prime HD can sell at least 2.53 million, about roughly on par with Dread, I think, give or take.
Right. Okay. So yeah, 15%, 20%. So this is one where you'd love to be wrong and pleasantly surprised. And if someone would have said that Animal Crossing New Horizons is over 20 million, I would have said 0%, and we know how that turned out. So
if somebody, I'll go a step further. If somebody told me that Breath of the Wild would sell more copies than Super Mario Odyssey, which, by the way, Mario Odyssey is, I believe, the best-selling 3D Mario game of all time. Not total, if you include 2D titles, I believe that goes to the original Super Mario Brothers, but in terms of 3D titles, Odyssey is the best-selling, and Breath of the Wild has sold, I believe, 3 or 4 million more than that, which is historical and unprecedented, so anything is possible as far as I'm concerned.
All right, so there it is. Let's move on to our next Samus's percentage. No 2D Metroid game will ever surpass Super Metroid as the consensus best 2D game. No 2D Metroid game will ever surpass Super Metroid as a consensus best 2D game. What do you think, Doom? I have a percentage in my mind, but what do you think?
I'm going to say probably 100% actually. And I say this as somebody where... Yeah. And I say this as somebody with, there's quite a bit of 2D games that I prefer to Super Metroid. I mean, I like Zero Mission, Fusion, Dread, all more than Super Metroid. Not that I don't like Super Metroid. Super Metroid, again, is a masterpiece. I love that game. But, I mean, if you look at the consensus, I mean, consistently you see Super Metroid ranked among not just near the top with Metroid Prime in terms of Metroid games. You see Super Metroid constantly ranked within the top 10, usually within the top 5 of greatest games of all time in various sources. And I mean, granted, the future isn't set in stone. Maybe there could be some perfect 2D Metroid game that just does everything right to every single gaming demographic and it somehow surpasses Super Metroid, but it's going to be incredibly difficult because of that legacy that Super Metroid holds and just the influence that singular title alone holds on so many games. I mean, it pretty much is the reason that we have the Metroidvania genre today, that single game. And because of that influence alone, I just don't see another game, even if it is objective, for lack of a better word, better than Super Metroid, I don't think that it can have that same history behind it and propel it to those same heights. So I'm going to say 100% Super Metroid will forever be regarded as kind of the cream of the crop, at least for 2D Metroid.
Ooh, you should see the smile on my face. You want to know what my percentage is?
100?
100%. And for everything that you just said, I echo. Except for, I think Super Metroid is still a far superior 2D Metroid game to Zero Mission and Fusion and probably Dread in a lot of ways as well. But, I mean, speaking of Dread, you could look at that game and say objectively there are a lot of things that Dread does better than Super Metroid. But then with like for everything that you mentioned, the legacy, the creation of the genre, 30 years have passed in between, which I think gives people a lot of leeway when judging. And the fact that Super Metroid is still so playable and so relevant just in modern gaming, it kind of found a second life as a speedrunning game. I think that this is undoubtedly the best 2D Metroid game for basically ever. I don't know if there is a 2D Metroid game that is going to come along and take that title from it. And I don't know. I might argue that you could definitely make a compelling case for Metroid Prime as the best Metroid game, and I wouldn't necessarily argue against that if someone were to make that case, but I would even say a step further and say that this is probably just going to be the consensus best Metroid game for the rest of its lifespan.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely agree with that. I think within the Metroid community, you definitely see debates on whether Super or Prime is the best Metroid game, but outside of it, like, occasionally I'll see some debates, but mostly it seems pretty unilateral, like outside of the Metroid community, that Super Metroid is the superior game. And again, you even go to like, Game Informer or like IGN, like constantly, like when you see like greatest games of all times, it's Super Metroid, Super Metroid, Super Metroid. And I mean, granted, maybe, like I said, is it possible? Sure, there could be like times changing, new people come in, new editors, and the consensus starts to change, but I just personally doubt it, just because, like you said, it's already been, nearly 3 decades.
Yep, I agree. Okay, great answer. Let's move on to our next Samus's percentages. We're on a roll so far, Doom. Let's keep it going here. If Metroid Prime Hunters released in 2004 with the Nintendo DS and not 2 years later, Hunters would be an ongoing sub-series to this day. Very interesting. Because I think that the delay really hampered Metroid Prime Hunters. And I know that the game actually did sell like 1 million copies, which is certainly nothing to scoff at. But when First Hunt was packaged with the Nintendo DS, I think that if that game was available to purchase like right then, or maybe even like 3 months later, it would have done like triple what it ended up selling. And I could have seen like a world where there is like more Hunters games, where like the 3 million, let's just ballpark, people that bought Metroid Prime Hunters in 2004 would be like, I want another Hunters game, and there's demand for it, so they make another one, and then maybe another one. So I could see that world. My only issue that kind of drags the percentage down a little bit is, if this game was released in 2004, would it have been any good? Because it probably wasn't ready to be. I mean, obviously it wasn't ready to be released in 2004. So while it might have sold a lot of copies, people might have bought a less polished game. So I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts before I assign my percentage.
So I'm just going to pretend that development started on this earlier than it actually did, and just assume that like the quality of the first game was roughly the quality that we got in the final release. Just for the sake of argument, since this is all make-believe anyways. So I'm just gonna say, yeah. The only difference is that this first release doesn't have Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi wouldn't release on the DS till the following year with Mario Kart DS. Greatest Mario Kart game of all time, by the way. But yeah. And I can totally buy that for sure. I can totally see the first Hunters being an introduction to DS local multiplayer of what's possible, and then the sequel being the introduction to Wi-Fi multiplayer and just amping everything up and incorporating ideas that even maybe that first Hunters, wasn't quite able to adapt to. And so I'm gonna say 75%. 75% Hunters releases within at least 3 months of the DS, that we get at least one, if not more, sequels in that sub-series.
Okay, I'm not quite as bullish as you. I think I'm gonna say 60%, but better than 50%, because
I think that's fair. Yeah,
I really do. The only thing for me is like it would be a lot, I think, to assume that development started earlier than it did, and I just think that if we would have got a bad Metroid Prime Hunters game, that would have tanked it. But I think that certainly there was definitely room for, because like First Hunt was pretty fun for what it was, and even if it was like a more, even if the game that was released in 2004 wasn't quite the fleshed out full like Wi-Fi campaign that Hunters ended up being, I think that if you served like a solid game with like a solid single player campaign and focus on different hunters and weapons, and you had like at least like local play or whatever, I think that it maybe could have sparked enough interest for at least one sequel. Maybe, I don't know, maybe instead of Federation Force we would have gotten like Metroid Prime Hunters 2 if that would have taken off. Who knows?
Yeah,
so I'm gonna say 60%.
Yeah, I think overall that's a fair assessment of it. I think regardless if it got a sequel or not, I think we could both agree that it would have sold a lot more copies for sure.
For sure, yeah, for sure. Okay, our next Samus's percentages is up here, and actually this builds off something that you just mentioned, Doom. So I'm gonna let you go first because I know that this is your jam. Samus will be a playable character in the next Mario Kart game.
Ooh. Interesting.
Okay, well, if you're humming, I got a percentage ready to go. Are you ready for this? 95%.
95, that is
95%. High. And let me tell you why, okay? I was actually talking about Mario Kart on the Champions Cast earlier today with Allison, and I was kind of reiterating my idea for DLC that I personally would have found more exciting than the old tracks with like new, let's call it franchise packs, where like you could have got, let's say, a Fire Emblem pass, and like you got a Fire Emblem rider and like 2 courses, or like a Xenoblade one or whatever. I just like, what else does Mario Kart have to do? Like where else can it go? Like I think that, to me, like the more casual Mario Kart fan, I'm like, I don't want to play as like Baby Rosalina or Cat Peach or like Dry Bones. Like those are just boring.
What? Dry Bones is awesome. Okay, whatever.
But if you were to say to me, hey, the new Mario Kart game is going to be basically Smash Kart, and we're going to have like Splatoon stages, and we're going to have Metroid stages, and we're going to have like, you know what I mean? Like go down the list, Star Fox stages. I'm just like, hell yeah, where do I buy this? And like, how much do I have to give you for it? Because I'll give you anything. I mean, I think that that's where Mario Kart is going. Because like, what else is there to do? You know, they've been to every stage so far, or like, it seems to me that they've been to like every possible, I don't know, like area or memorable area for Mario and made it into a racing track. They've certainly got every character they possibly could onto this roster. I feel like the only other way to go is to expand out and make it like a quote-unquote Smash Kart. And I think that the next Mario Kart will do that. So I'm going to go high. I'm going to say 95%.
If Mario Kart 9 is indeed Smash Kart, then I'm going to go a full 100 that Samus is a playable character. For sure. If Mario Kart 9 is not Nintendo Kart, I'm going to say 60%. 60% if Mario Kart 9 is not Nintendo Kart, that she's in the game. So I guess combine those two together, and I'll go
like a cool 75?
Yeah, I'm thinking another 75 for this. Yeah, thinking another 75 for this. Yeah. Sounds about right.
I can live with that. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what else they do with that series. You know what they should do? They should remake Diddy Kong Racing, the best kart racer game ever made.
I was about to say they should do like a full single player campaign like Diddy Kong Racing at the very least. That would, even as a, as a more hardcore Mario Karter, that would certainly appeal to me even there. Even though I'm more interested in stuff like mechanics and technicality, the stuff that like 99.9% of the things that most people don't and should not care about. But yeah.
All right. Well, we got that one down. Let's move on to our next Samus's percentage.
All right, hit me up.
Metroid Prime HD will add new areas, boss fights, and music.
0%.
So essentially, 0%. Wow. Okay.
0%. I do not think that there will be any additional content to this game outside of like menu options and modifiers. I don't think there's going to be like any extra areas or anything like that. Maybe Actually, you know what? Just for the music option, I'll bump that up to 10%. Just because I do think that that's, while not likely, maybe possible. I mean, that's not exactly unprecedented in some of the re-releases, but like, you know, outside of Xenoblade Definitive Edition, I can't really think of like any game that's, you know, any remake that's gotten like substantial additional content level. I mean, you got Bowser's Fury 2, but that's basically like you know, a separate game attached to it. I don't really count that as like bonus content for 3D World, you know what I mean?
Okay. I'm thinking that I'm actually not super high on this either, but I don't think that they can release. So if the rumors are true and they're just remaking Metroid Prime 1 and they're gonna, you know, up-res or whatever the graphics and maybe add in dual analog controls, I don't think that's enough to sell that game for like full price. And it never had DLC, and that's kind of a theme that you see when you're looking at all the Wii U releases on the Switch. They're at least packaged with some DLC, or, you know, the famous like Funky Kong mode that came with Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. I think that they have to add something. I think it would be a tough pill to swallow if it was just that game and nothing else. Now, if they release the Metroid Prime trilogy, the chances are obviously 0%. There's 0% that that's going to happen. If they release just Metroid Prime 1, I still don't think that the chances are that high, but I might go 25%. So I guess to split the difference, I'm going to go 16%. But I don't know. I think that they have to add something, and I'm not sure what that is, but I could maybe see like an expanded Frigate Orpheon area, or like maybe like a post game, or like something like that. So not something as substantial as like Zero Mission or Samus Returns, obviously, but I don't know. I feel like they gotta add some, or I feel like they should add something. How about that? I don't know if they will, but I feel like they should, because to me, fancier graphics and better controls isn't enough for just the first Metroid Prime game.
Oh, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, like, give me Metacritic in Prime 4 or Prime HD, please. But, you know, will they do it? I'm thinking probably not, personally. Because I mean, you mentioned, like, you know, the Wii U ports and the DLC, but like outside of the Wii U ports, like, again, like, when have you seen like substantial content added? I mean, again, you got Xenoblade Definitive Edition, but that was done particularly by Monolith Soft. That wasn't, you know, something that Nintendo internally worked on, or one of their other studios that they own. That was specifically a Monolith Soft thing. And then what else you got? You got, you know, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. I mean, Twilight Princess
doesn't really have anything.
Yeah, you got like the bonus like cave of the Shadow Cave thing in Twilight Princess, but I mean that's like an enemy / mini boss rush, not really like a new area. You know what I mean?
So I guess the underlying question that we have to answer here is if Nintendo releases Metroid Prime HD, is it going to be more along the lines of like a Zero Mission, or is it going to be more along the lines of like a Twilight Princess HD? And unfortunately, I feel like the answer is probably the latter.
I think it's going to be a little bit more work than I think it's going to be somewhere like Wind Waker HD, or maybe even Xenoblade Definitive, but without all like, you know, the bonus content. I'm like purely like when it comes to like the visual overhaul, because I actually do have a feeling that this visual update is going to be relatively ambitious for what we've come to expect from Nintendo, at least then. But I mean, obviously we won't know until we see it.
All right. Well, I'm at 15%. What did you give that?
10% just for the music alone. 0%.
Right.
0% for everything else.
Rip. Okay. Well, here's another one that I'm not sure that the percentages are going to be too high, but I can hope. Let's go. Metroid Dread will have paid DLC revealed this June in the Nintendo Direct.
Ooh, you know, I kind of want to wait to do this until my E3 predictions episode, but you know what, for now I'll go 50%.
50%. Okay. Yeah, I was going to go a little bit high, but I don't know that I was going to go. Actually, hold on a sec. Give us either 51 or 49. Commit.
49.
49. Okay. I was going to go high because I kind of have a feeling in my bones, but I still think that it's not very likely. I was going to go 40%, and I'll explain my rationale. I think that it's not very likely that it has paid DLC that wasn't announced already. Typically, I feel like Nintendo announces their paid DLC at like the beginning of like the game's release and says that like this is coming. But I think that if Metroid Prime HD is not real, or maybe I'll rephrase that. If Metroid Prime HD does not release this in the last half of 2022, like we kind of think that it might, I think that the chances for this go up significantly because, you know, we still don't really have anything for that October time slot as far as I know. And I think that that could be a nice like 1 year anniversary gimmick to just give Metroid Dread some DLC. So yeah, I'm going to say 40%.
So there is one notable example that I'm thinking of at the top of my head, and there's probably others that I'm not thinking of, but when it comes to like major DLC expansions that have been announced like well after the game came out, obviously I think of something that actually just recently came to the NSO expansion pass, being the Splatoon 2 Octo expansion, which is phenomenal, by the way, folks. If you have a copy of Splatoon 2, you've got to play the Octo expansion. This is basically what Splatoon 2's campaign should have been, in my opinion. Absolutely phenomenal. So many crazy cool ideas. It could have
been a standalone game, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, it's just so good. It's so good. Easily like the peak of like the Splatoon campaign experience so far. And I hope Splatoon 3 gets even crazier and weirder in that direction. But yeah, point is, that wasn't announced, I want to say, until there was a March or April Direct. Yeah, it was the March Direct. It was the March Direct of 2018, because that was when they announced Smash Ultimate right after, before it had the Ultimate in the subtitle with the Inkling reveal. I remember now. So yeah, they announced that in March, and the game came out the previous year in July. So there was a bit of time. Obviously, more time in... Actually, no, yeah, about that same amount of time will have passed by the time we get to the June Direct in Metroid, so...
The Mario Party game got, like, DLC, like, 2 years or something crazy after it was released. I mean, obviously, that's a little bit different than Metroid Dread, but it's not like it's impossible, I guess, is the point.
I think it was more than 2 years, because Super Mario Party came out in 2018... And the online expansion, was that in 2020 or was that in 2021? I can't remember.
That was like only a couple months ago, I feel like 2021 for sure.
So that was 3 years then, yeah. But I feel like that was more so just a testing ground for like the online and the new Mario Party, because they never actually added any like bonus content, no characters, no boards, nothing, which I'm a bit off topic from what we're talking about, but I swear, if they do not add any maps, regardless whether they're paid or not in Super Mario Party, I'm actually going to cry, because that game is so good and it needs more content. I mean, it's only got 5 retro maps. I mean, there's so much potential there. Like, Super Mario Party is such a good base to, like, start rebuilding the series on. But anyways, I digress. Back on topic. Metroid Dread DLC, 49%. There is precedent before of DLC getting announced relatively late after a game's release, so I don't think that's impossible with Dread. That being said, I also don't think that Dread is necessarily guaranteed to have DLC, because I'm not sure how they would fit another DLC campaign in there. Some people have suggested maybe just adding another area into the current game, but I feel like that would completely throw off the balance, because the current game is specifically built to be played in a specific path, assuming you're not sequence breaking or stuff like that. But throwing in another area would completely throw that all off, and so I feel like you'd have to do a standalone minigame.
I think you could do another area if it was positioned in a similar fashion as, like you go back to the bottle ship in Other M after you're done the game, and like kind of find that new area where Fantoon is or whatever. I feel like they could maybe do something similar to that, where like you revisit some other areas and maybe it's kind of like in ruin because of the explosion. Well, I don't know. I guess ZDR completely exploded, so maybe it's a spaceship or something. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel like they could do it if it's like a mini Metroid adventure in a new location. I feel like they could do that. I don't see it happening on the current ZDR map if they were to do like a paid story mode DLC expansion.
Yeah, I think it would be something new as well. Maybe you're even playing as Ravenbeak. Who knows? But,
you know what? I am not opposed to that. That there's potential in that.
Hey, I mean, you got to capture Kraid. You got to capture Z57. There could be some cool stuff there. But...
Maybe we play as Ravenbeak and we learn more about him, and he becomes that third dimensional villain that we both very much want in the Metroid series. Shameless plug to Andy's OmegaMetroid.com article.
All right. Well, how about we segue from that shameless plug into a shameless segue for our next Samus's percentage. Let's go. One of either Ravenbeak or Mother Brain will return in a future new Metroid game. So one of either Ravenbeak or Metroid will be back in a new 2D Metroid. Actually, not even 2D, just a new Metroid game.
Okay, so obviously this is not including remakes. It has to be a new original entry.
It has to be a new original entry into the series.
I'm gonna say 70%. I think I'm not sure about Ravenbeak specifically, but I feel like Mother Brain, because we've seen, you know, they tried to bring back Mother Brain in Other M. Obviously it wasn't in the best possible form, but you know, I mean, she was technically there in some capacity.
Let me also just stipulate this: it can't be like a flashback or anything like that. Like we're talking like they're alive and they're doing something.
Well, I'm talking about MB, not the Mother Brain.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Just try not to give anyone any ideas or anything if they want to put a percentage on it like that.
I feel like Mother Brain is definitely something that could be brought back. And in a sense, you kind of almost saw Mother Brain in Dread with the central units, which are clearly based off of Mother Brain's technology. But obviously, we're not counting those. We're not counting the Aurora units in Corruption. We're talking about Mother Brain in the flesh. And I'm going to give a 70 on that. I can see them bringing her back.
I'm probably going to go 80%. 80%. Because I agree. I think that of the two, Mother Brain is certainly more likely. And I also think that you wouldn't need to like have like a super logical reason to bring Mother Brain back. I could see them just doing it in a similar way that they bring Ridley back or Kraid back or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
Because yeah, you're right. We've already seen like the Mother Brain like organisms in the Aurora units and in the Central units in Dread, and obviously MB was kind of a. I actually think MB was a cool idea, I have to say, but maybe not executed all that well. But they've certainly danced around that idea before. And I don't think it's like completely outrageous that we see Mother Brain come back in a new Metroid game, like a Metroid 6 or 7. My only thing that makes it so it's not 100% is like if Mother Brain comes back, but it's not like the same Mother Brain, but it's more like a title. You know what I mean? Like we have a new machine and it's our new Mother Brain, rather than like this is the big giant brain that we have fought before.
Kind of like MB and Other M.
Kind of, yeah, but like built by the Space Pirates, it's specifically like Mother Brain, where the best way I can think of to describe it is like it's a title, or like this is your position or something like that, where it's not like the exact same life form, but it's basically a new updated version of that. That probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what I could see it getting a little bit sticky.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. Kind of like what we were kind of like what you were talking about before. I can't remember what episode it was, but it was like the possibility of like Adam being in like a robot suit instead of like the voice. I think that was during the Kiwi Q&A.
Yeah, that was last week.
And the Kristen Q. Yeah. I was like, yeah, because that was still in my brain. So you're kind of like proposing something like that, but with Mother Brain is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, maybe kind of, or like another way to look at it would be, what's a good example? Of course, I can't think of one now on the spot, but like, I don't know. I can't think of a good example, but like if you were like, let's say that there is like, if you're playing Skyrim or something like that, like there's always a Dragonborn or something, or like there's always that kind of like hero or title or whatever. I don't know. I feel like I'm not making sense, so I'll keep it at 80% and hope someone knows what
kind of like how there's multiple versions of the superhero. Like you have Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern, but you also have John Stewart as the Green Lantern.
Yes, Green Lantern. Thank you for saving my ass here, Doom. That's a great analogy. Yes.
Gotcha.
So technically you have Green Lantern, but it's not like it's exactly the same Green Lantern.
Okay.
Russ somewhere is loving this conversation, and we just died for like the last 5 minutes here talking about Mother Brain. But let's all right, let's move on. So you're saying, I'm saying 80. What were you saying?
70%. So about 70%. Roughly near ballpark.
All right, so we're high on this. The next two ones I think are like real doozies. So I'm excited for these ones. Let's go.
Oh boy.
Nintendo will pull a swerve and get a new developer to make a Metroid game in the next 5 years, similar to how Team Ninja was given the reins for Other M. So it would seem that we're firmly in place with Mercury Steam as our 2D developer and Retro Studio as our 3D developer. But, I mean, back in the day, it seemed like we were really firmly in place with Retro as the prime developers and Nintendo themselves as the 2D developers. And then, out of nowhere, we got Team Ninja. So I could totally see this happening. I'm going to say 65%. Because Nintendo likes to do weird things like this. The only thing that I'm not sure of is if it's going to be like a big mainline Metroid game, because of course we saw them give Federation Force to Next Level Gaming, but that was kind of like a side project, not really a big deal. But I could totally see them doing something like that again. If the question was if they're going to do like a spin-off like that again, I'd be much higher. But I think the question just being like a core main Metroid game, I could still see them doing something like that. Like, it seems like Nintendo can't help themselves. When they have a good thing going with Metroid, they somehow muck it up and, like, I don't know, trip over their own feet. So I could see this happening. Now, the hope would be that they give it to an awesome developer and they make an awesome game. And hopefully Team Ninja was just kind of a one-off. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first off, regarding Other M's quality, I mean, I feel like most of that is on Sakamoto himself. You know, as much as we love the guy, I mean, Other M's story
that's actually true.
Other M's story is entirely Sakamoto's thing. Team Ninja had little, if anything, to do with the story decisions. Even the gameplay, which Team Ninja, they mostly focused on the gameplay, a lot of that was supervised by Sakamoto, and it was his decision to make it exclusive to the singular Wii Remote and no nunchuck. So that was a constraint that was put upon Team Ninja. I still don't think they were. I still don't think they were the correct developer to make a Metroid game, but I just thought it's important to throw that out there. But regarding, I think eventually in the future we will get a mainline Metroid game that does have a new studio that we've never seen before. I don't think that's going to happen in the next 5 years, though. I think when it comes to mainline entries, and that's the key word there, I think it's still going to be Mercury Steam working on the 2D entries, Retro working on the 3D entries. Nintendo seems pretty confident in Retro. They literally scrapped the previous build of Metroid Prime 4 and let Retro rebuild it from the ground up because they're so confident in them. Sakamoto has come out and said multiple times that he absolutely loves working with Mercury Steam. Obviously, he was so impressed with them with Samus Returns that he brought them on to make, his dream project that's been in the back of his mind for, a decade and a half now. So I feel like both of the creative teams are satisfied with their current studios that they're working with, and I don't see the mainline entries veering too far off. Spin-offs, however, is where it changes, and I don't think
that's the key.
Exactly, and I would not be shocked at all if we got like some Metroid spin-off. Pinball 2, maybe, please. Developed by some other studio. And so in that regards, I'm going to go 60% just for the spin-offs, but I'm going to go 0% for a mainline entry developed by a brand new studio.
Okay, I like that. You know how I said the next two were doozies? It's actually the next three.
Uh-oh.
So let's get ready. Samus's percentages. Mercury Steam is working on a Metroid Fusion remake as we speak right now.
Ooh, as we speak.
As we are talking to each other, friend to friend, on the Omega Metroid podcast, Mercury Steam is in Spain working on Metroid Fusion, the remake. I'm gonna take a leap of faith here, Doom, and I'm gonna say 80%.
I can't go that high. As much as I want to, I can't go that high. I'm actually gonna have it. I'm gonna go 40. I'm gonna cut that percentage in half and go 40 on that. I think this is gonna be our first opposite take here. And I say that as somebody who would love a Metroid Fusion remake. I mean, Metroid Fusion is either my second or third favorite Metroid game now. It's so hard to tell after Dread. It's definitely... I definitely need to replay some of my top billings to definitively put Fusion someplace now, but I mean, for the longest time, Fusion has been my second favorite Metroid title, not including AM2R. And so having this remade with a lot of the Dread conventions, I mean, just being able to slide in Fusion alone is just going to be phenomenal. And, you know, having Mercury Steam do that with the work that they've done, I really want it. And clearly, I mean, they love Fusion. They clearly have a huge appreciation for it. And so I feel like if any game's going to be right in someone's hands, they're the ones to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on Fusion. Are they working on it right now, though? I don't know. And again, it's up to Nintendo. It's up to Nintendo, because originally that was going to be their pitch, was the Fusion remake, but ultimately
right.
Sakamoto was like, nah, you're gonna do Samus Returns instead. So maybe now that Dread is available, they they go back to remakes. Maybe they want them to do Metroid 6. Maybe they do the gargantuan task of putting him on to work a Super Metroid remake, which I hope not, because I don't think Super Metroid needs to be remade. But yeah. I mean, ultimately it's up to Nintendo and Sakamoto. Maybe they feel like, hey, Super Metroid's the bigger name, that's the one we're doing next. It's what comes after Metroid 2. So actually, you know what? I talked myself into raising it a little bit. I'm going to go up flat 50. No 49, no 51. I'm just going to do a flat 50 on this. I think 50%.
I think you got to commit, man. I don't know if you could be on the fence in this show. I think it's got to tip one way.
I can't.
I'm putting my foot down.
Okay, fine. 49%. 49%. We'll go 49.
I'm sticking with my 80, man. I think Metroid Fusion desperately needs a remake. It's for my money not one of the better 2D Metroid games, even though it's still like obviously a fantastic video game, and I like Metroid Fusion a lot. But there are so many I think that if you were to remake Metroid Fusion and fix some of the problems that very easily could be fixed, it could be a top Metroid game. And
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
That it needs it. And I think that it's going to get the Zero Mission Samus Returns treatment, and I think that will be important. And I'm going to stop there because I do have another Samus's percentage question that we'll get to if we have time. I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but we'll just leave it there. Next, Samus's percentage. Are you ready?
Let's go.
5 years from now, we will look back at Metroid Prime Federation Force and say that it was a fun and underappreciated Metroid game.
You know what? I'm actually gonna put a 60% on this. And here's the thing: when I say this, I'm not talking about myself. I think Federation Force is just straight up a bad game. I've talked about it multiple times on the podcast. That being said, though, we've already seen I've seen multiple people in the Metroid community, talk about how Federation Force just came out at the wrong time, and so I feel like that's just going to increase, as time passes on. So yeah,
I agree. I'm really high on this. I think it's 90% that the general consensus is going to be like, oh, Metroid Prime Federation Force was actually pretty fun and pretty good, and it was just released at the wrong time. Now, there is no doubt that Federation Force was released at the wrong time. No doubt. But I think that like it's just a bang average game at best and probably a bad game in most aspects. So like, do I agree with that sentiment? No, but I do think that it's likely. I mean, look, you're seeing people look back and say like, Other M was not that bad, when I think that, I defend Other M in a lot of areas, but I do think that at the end of the day, that was a bad video game. And I think the same thing about Federation Force, unfortunately. But I think that we're kind of seeing it already. People are kind of already starting to, and I think that that's natural. Like over time, you just look back at the positives. So I'm pretty high on this. I'm saying 90%.
Yeah, because not only do you have the passage of time, but you also have for lack of a better word, real Metroid games now on top of that. Because, when Federation Force came out, I mean, we were still reeling off the sludge of Other M. Now we have Samus Returns, Dread, we have rumors of a Prime remaster or remake in the works, and obviously we got the tantalizing Metroid Prime 4, where the light is just slowly but surely getting brighter and brighter at the end of that tunnel. And so I feel like people are going to start to be a little more kinder on Federation Force. It shall not be me, though. I will let others do that.
I actually think it's already started, to be honest.
I agree. Like, I've seen it, like, throughout the community.
Yeah. Okay, I think that we have time for two more, and then we'll call it a day here. And they're both going to be centered on Metroid Prime 4. So let's go.
I like it.
Samus's percentages. Metroid Prime 4 will launch on the successor to the Nintendo Switch.
Ooh, so here's the thing. This is actually something that a year ago I thought would be almost a bet, almost a guaranteed. Because this was actually like one of my big predictions. I thought that Prime 4 was going to be Twilight Princess or Breath of the Wild and simultaneously released on the Switch, and not like a Switch Pro or a Switch 1X, but like a Switch 2, a full next-gen successor to the Switch. That was what I was predicting. I'm not so sure about that anymore, and so I'm going to go 55% on this, actually. I'm gonna go just above that 50 mark, but I'm not as confident as I would have been before. A year ago, I probably would have gone 75 or 80.
I was hoping I wanted you to go first so that I could listen to your argument and perhaps sway me, because I can see both things happening. And I think that we'll find out soon enough. Like, I think that we'll find out in 2022 whether Metroid Prime 4 is going to launch on a next system or not. Because I think that if Nintendo is about to roll out their next system, I feel like they're probably going to show it off this year. And I don't really have any good reason for that. I don't know. I just kind of feel like that. So I think that if they show off, like, or just announce that they have plans for a new system and they've already been working on it, they don't even have to, like, show us what it is necessarily, or like the name or whatever. But if they if they say something along the lines of like, we're working on the NX2, I could see that being code for like, some future games are going to be on the next Switch. And a lot of people have said that about Breath of the Wild 2, which comes out, next year. So it kind of depends, I guess, on what your view of the successor for the Switch is. If it's like an upgraded Switch with like the long rumored Switch Pro, I think I might say like 60%, maybe even higher actually. But if it's like the next, if this is like the Switch to the Wii U, I think I'm gonna say like 30. So I don't know. I feel like I'm like right at the 50-50 line, and I know that I made you pick, so I'm gonna have to pick as well. So I guess I'll say 45%. Like, I think that this will still be a Nintendo Switch exclusive. But I'm not super sure about that, because I could see it going either way at this point. And again, we'll actually probably see some Metroid Prime 4 footage within the next 365 days, I would have to think. So that will give us an indication as well of where we're at, but I don't know. I could see this one going either way.
It all depends on when Metroid Prime 4 releases, because right now I'm predicting holiday 2023, which I feel like a lot of people are predicting that right now. It's been something that I've been predicting for a couple of years now. I want to say since 2020 I've been predicting that, but I don't know. We'll see if that comes to fruition or not. If it comes out in 2024, I think those odds substantially raise, because I don't think that we're seeing the next Switch until 2024 at the earliest. So it could be 2024, right. It could be later. I just do not see a brand new Switch releasing next year, though. And also regarding Breath of the Wild 2, because a lot of, not just you, but a lot of people have mentioned that, the footage that we have seen that looks so much better than Breath of the Wild 1, but it should be noted that the first Breath of the Wild... Do you really
think it looks better?
A lot of people, well, not just the resolution, the texture density and stuff like that. The frame rate in the footage has looked a lot more consistent than on Breath of the Wild. But I think one thing to note about that is that the first Breath of the Wild game was made with the Wii U hardware in mind, and then it was ported later to the Switch. This new Breath of the Wild is being made for the ground up for the Nintendo Switch. And honestly, that alone could count for the visual improvements that we've seen between the two titles. And it's nothing new. We've seen this, between tons of other games. I mean, look at the first and second Halo game, or even the first and second Metroid Prime games. Like, the first game still looks good, but I mean, you go to the second game, and it looks almost an entire generation above that. And so, I think it's very possible that Breath of the Wild 2 could very much just be running on base Switch hardware.
You know what? Again, I was talking about this earlier today on the Champions Cast, and I was asked this question as well. And you know what Breath of the Wild 2 looks like to me? Looks like Breath of the Wild. It doesn't look that much better. And if it does look a little bit better, it's been 6 years. It should look better.
Well,
you know
I mean, it looks like Breath of the Wild because it shares the same art style, and obviously, like, most of the improvements you're not going to notice unless you stick a screenshot side by side. But yeah.
I'm not buying that at all. Like, the amount of similarness between Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild 2, it looks like Splatoon 2 to Splatoon 3 to me. Like, it just looks like any regular upgrades that a sequel would have, and not something like, you go from, let's just say that you go from, like, Ocarina of Time to Twilight Princess, which Twilight Princess looks horrible, but I digress. You could clearly tell that it's a next generation game versus Ocarina of Time. Whereas to me, this just looks like Majora's Mask to Breath of the Wild's Ocarina of Time. So, like, I don't buy that at all. I think you're right. I don't see a new Nintendo system releasing in 2023. I don't see it. So I guess the question here, the secret question that we've stumbled upon is, like, really, do you think that Metroid Prime 4 comes out next year? Because if you do, it probably doesn't come out on the successor to the Switch. And if you don't, then the odds raise significantly. So that being said, I think you convinced me, Doom. I think I'm going to lower mine to 35%. Because I don't see this game coming out in 2024. And I don't see a new Nintendo, like, a new fully fledged Nintendo Switch successor coming out next year. I could see, like, a Switch Pro, but I can't see, like, a Switch 2.
Yeah, this will be something that we'll have to revisit after the June Direct for sure. Assuming we even get a release date when we can talk about that during our predictions video, but yeah.
By the way, Microsoft has went ahead and announced a date for, like, a Microsoft Direct that would take place when E3 would usually happen. I hope to God Nintendo does the same thing and they announce it, like, tomorrow. Give us, like, a month to get ready, book the day off work, etc., etc. So I
assume they're going to announce it around mid to late May. That's usually about consistent to when they announce their directs. So might have to wait a little bit longer, but
like, give us a week, just a week. A week's notice, man. Like, come on. Okay.
I believe 2 weeks is, like, the shortest notice that we've gotten. So I think we'll be fine.
Oh, all right, last one, and then we're out of here, Doom.
Did you save the best for last?
I have to be honest with you. I think that where was it? The developer one was really good. I think that the Federation Force one was really good, but this one is really good as well. So here we go. Sylux will live beyond the events of Metroid Prime 4.
I'm going to go 80% on this because I do believe that they are going to reuse... I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a standalone game. I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to be the start of a new trilogy, although I am kind of leaning in that direction at the moment, but I do think that there are going to be multiple games in this planned new story that Recho and Tanabe-san are making together. And I do believe that Sylux is going to be an integral part of that, and so I do think that he's still going to be alive. And honestly, it would make sense, Metroid Prime Dark Samus, I mean, she was there for 3 whole games. It would make sense that Sylux would, tie this new story together as well. So yeah. And obviously, Tanabe-san in particular has always been really interested in Sylux and has wanted to further develop and explore his origins more. And so I don't think they're just going to waste that alone on one game. I hope not, at least, because I do think there's quite a bit of potential there. But yeah, I'm going to go 80%.
All right, so I'm high on this, and I was gonna go 80 as well, but since you picked it, maybe I'll up the ante and go 85%. That's not really upping it by that much, but I think that I don't know. Maybe it's just because I want this, but I think that Sylux is going to be a character that is kind of like the side villain almost. Like he's going to be the character. I feel like he's going to play the arbiter role in Metroid Prime 4, assuming that he's part of Metroid Prime 4 at all, in which case the odds of this go up to 100%. But assuming that he's in the game and he plays a role in it, I think that it's more likely that he is the arbiter type, where it's like kind of an enemy that you fight, maybe your rival, but I don't think that he's going to be like the main antagonist. I know a lot of people think that. I just don't see it. And I really do, like, I really see a scenario where you're playing as Sylux in Metroid Prime 4. I really see that. But I'm not at 100%, because if you would have asked me before Metroid Dread came out the same question about Ravenbeak, I would have been pretty high. I would have said, like, yeah, I think that he's coming back. Now, maybe the percentage, would have went down because they did market Metroid Dread as the finale to the 2D Metroid saga as we know it, whereas, we obviously don't know anything about Metroid Prime 4 other than, what's safe to assume that it's probably a starting point. But, yeah, I just don't think that... I think that if you get rid of Sylux in Metroid Prime 4, that'd be a pretty big waste. That'd be a pretty big missed opportunity because like you kind of have like this interesting side character that's kind of been teased and popped up a little bit, but who most of like the general Metroid audience don't know. So like 95% of people playing Metroid Prime 4 are gonna meet Sylux for the first time, and I don't know. I just don't see it happening. But I didn't see Ravenbeak happening either. So what do I know?
I really like your analogy of making Sylux as kind of the arbiter of Metroid Prime 4. Obviously, I love Arbiter. I love Keith David, so, I mean, I'm already biased there. But...
By the way, I watched They Live a couple weeks ago now. God, that's a good movie. Him fighting Roddy Piper in the alley is like one of the best fight scenes in any movie ever.
I'll have to check that out for sure. I've heard about They Live, but I've never actually seen it before. But
it rocks.
But yeah, I really like that analogy. I don't think they're going to go in that direction. I'm also kind of split on whether or not he'll be the main antagonist or not. I could absolutely see there being like a much bigger threat, a much more finality of a threat that surpasses Sylux. I just think Sylux is going to be something that ties the trilogy together. I do think that he's going to be a pretty not black and white antagonist, but definitely not an anti-hero, not like a redeemable character. I think he's very much going to be a villain character with villainous motives. I hope that's not...
That would be so disappointing.
I hope not, because there's so much potential. I mean, I know Dak is kind of over the whole, Dark Galactic Federation plotline at this point, but, like, I still think that there's some potential there. And, I mean, Sylux... The one thing we know about Sylux is he despises the Federation and Samus by association. That would be a really cool way to tie in the more darker aspects of the Federation and making him a compelling character. Like, the reason he hates the Federation so much is because he was, like, experimented on or something like that. And, he knows stuff about the Federation that Samus doesn't know. And I don't know.
Well, let me raise you this too, Doom. What if, Sylux has let's call it a very legitimate reason for hating the Federation, which I feel like he must. And then going off of that Dark Federation storyline, Samus is kind of saying like, you know what, you're right. Like, these guys suck. Like, they're bad guys, and I'm gonna get rid of them. I think that could be the thing that makes makes them not enemies, not friends, but like not trying to kill each other either. I think that the potential is there to have like a very arbiter role Metal Gear Solid 2-esque scenario, as we've kind of talked about for the last couple weeks here.
I don't see that happening just because Prime 4 is too early in the timeline. Like, Samus doesn't really start to lose trust in the Federation until Other M. That's like where she first experiences like some of the more corrupted aspects. And then
my friend, you're making an assumption though that Metroid Prime 4 takes place after Metroid Prime 3, directly after. And I'm not making that assumption. I think it's wide open.
I think it's almost guaranteed that it takes place after Federation Force.
We'll see. Well, so maybe that should be on the next.
I was about to say like that should be the next bet, because I would honestly I'd go 100 on that bet. Even though I think that Prime should move out of that space, I think there's much more interesting things that you can do post Dread with the Prime games. But I think for now, it's Prime 4 is going to be taking place right after Federation Force.
I'm not sold on that, and I'm coming up with a bunch of great ideas for the next Samus's percentages. That I'm going to write down right now so I don't forget them. Doom, I had a lot of fun with this segment. This is a good topic to debut, and we had a lot of good conversation.
Absolutely. I'm always a sucker for a good buy or sell segment, and so having this a Metroid-themed variant of it, always a good time. Got some good discussion going. I feel like we agreed on a surprising amount of topics, but those few that we had the polarizing opinions on definitely, I think, created the most interesting topics for sure. Really had a lot of fun.
Well, we'll bring the segment back because I had a list of at least half a dozen more that we did not use today, and as we're talking right now, I'm thinking of again another half dozen that we could use in the future. So let us know what you think about this, and hey, maybe we'll even take some fan submissions for Samus's percentages. So that'd be cool. But that's gonna do it for this week's show. This was a lot of fun. I had a great time. Doom, this was it was a pleasure to finally talk to you again. I feel like it's been forever. I feel like we talk all the time, but to hear your lovely voice was a pleasure.
Oh, well, thank you, Andy, and yours as well. Yeah, school's just been school plus work has been really busy. I mean, I work I do broadcast directing for my school sporting events, and so, we've just been doing a lot of weekend games, which is unfortunately when we record the podcast, so it's been difficult to find some free time to do it. But semester ends in a couple weeks, and so you might be seeing me on the podcast a bit more frequently. Certainly come that inevitable June Direct, because not a chance I'm going to be missing out on that.
Absolutely, and there is no chance that you should miss out on any episodes of the Omega Metroid podcast, and you can make sure that happens by subscribing everywhere that you get your podcasts: Google, Apple, Spotify, Podbean, wherever. We'd really love it if you left us a 5-star review, actually. That would be fantastic. And, of course, we want you to check us out over on social media at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at Doominal Cross. And check out the website while you're at it. There's tons of bonus content there on Patreon, ROM hack reviews, the Spiteri Show, so much other stuff that you can sink your teeth into if you do not have enough Metroid in your life. Go out and check OmegaMetroid.com for that. That'll do it for this week. Until next week, everybody, take care.